My name is Emmanuel Murangira. I come from Rwanda, and I'm here in Northern Ireland to speak to the churches in Northern Ireland and to other peace builders in Northern Ireland about peace building and reconciliation with a specific focus on forgiveness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much for coming along this afternoon. I am delighted to be back in this space. It's a fabulous building and I know it fairly well, having worked here and started my own peace building journey, if you will, here. And I've been along to some of the other events as well, and I just thought it would be a fantastic opportunity when I heard Emmanuel was coming. Basically, I work for the Irish Churches Peace Project. It's a project that's funded by Peace 3 also, and it has been set up by the 4 largest denominations in partnership with the Irish Council of Churches, with a view to allowing the churches to play a role within the peace building arena. I have been in post about 18 months now, maybe a little bit more, and like all projects, it's funded for a particular cycle, covering the northwest area from Strabane to Castlederg, to here in the city, Portstewart, and I have a bit of work that'll happen in Limavady as well. I don't want to go on too much because it'll take away from our speaker, but I suppose it's probably I've found it to be new for some of the clergy involved. For example, in Strabane there was no contact whatsoever between clergy at all. And my role in the beginning there was to try and initiate a process where they would come together and get to know one another and decide upon a project that would be more visible in the wider community. And we did a cultural diversity programme there prior to Christmas. Up here in the city, we did a project in terms of one of the themes was to try and encourage people to engage in the more difficult conversations, and the programme was around the theme of forgiveness, and it ran over 4 different nights. The project tries to encourage the church leaders to talk together with a united voice on various themes as they may arise. An example locally would be when there was the attacks in Donegal. I think there was 2 that followed one another on a church, and then I think on an Orange Hall and that as well. So they did make a statement to that effect. We did a community support initiative, which involved people coming together just to stand for the common good in terms of raising awareness and funding for the Churches Food Bank project, which is administered by the Churches Trust, and also for the homeless hostel, which is run by the Northwest Methodist Mission. In Portstewart, they're trying to get together a group that would be representative of 6 different churches and constitute themselves so that they can evolve going forward and get more involved and connect it with the local community there. So that's a wee flavour of some of the stuff that we've been doing. Emmanuel's here. There's a conference on in Belfast where a lot of people from all the different areas. I work here with people, there's 6 good relations officers, of which I am one. So there's the North Belfast area, there would be the Enniskillen in the border area, there would be Craigavon, and then Mid-Ulster, and also Newry and Mourne. So there's a lot of different projects and work going on all across the different areas, and they're having a conference tomorrow, and Emmanuel is one of our guest speakers. So we basically said we can't miss the opportunity to bring him to other places, and so we were delighted when it was able to work out that he would be able to come here for a day as well. So we had 100 pupils this morning there, congregated over in Clooney Hall, and he shared the story around where he comes from, his own personal story, and the role that he's involved in. So without further ado, I'll just hand over to Emmanuel. Thank you for coming, Emmanuel, and thank you all for coming as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John. you're probably wondering why I'm standing behind this and everybody else was standing on the other side. I'm a preacher, so we like to hide behind this. That's what we do for a living. But thank you very much for having me here. I'm really delighted to find out that there is a place where peacemakers in a city can actually come together, meet and exchange and share. It doesn't happen in every city in this world, and I wish it would happen in very many other cities, because all the cities I've been to need peacemakers. All cities that I've traveled to, I've been to very many cities, and I think all cities need peacemakers like you, and they need space. They need a place where to go and exchange ideas, share their pain and share their joys, and especially share the successes when they see people changing, moving away from conflict to prosperity, because that's what follows when people move away from conflict. When I got here, I saw the Garden of Reflection, and I thought, what a good idea. Because as a Christian, I believe life begins in a garden. I don't know, maybe other people believe it begins somewhere else, but that's what I believe. I believe life began in a garden. And what a better place to begin with peace, where people can reflect, where people can think, where people can think about their community, where people can think about their neighborhood, where people can think about peace in their lifetime. So I want to encourage you that this is the greatest idea I've come across in the Northern Hemisphere in this century. As you are told, my name is Emmanuel, and I come from Rwanda. And in a week's time, when I return home, we will be having a whole week of remembrance. We'll be remembering about 1 million people killed in my country because of who they were, because of the way they were born. Had they been given a choice, they would have chosen to be born differently or to be different, just to live. But 1 million people died because of who they were, how they were born. They didn't choose to be born like that. That's the country where I come from. And you can imagine, in a place where you've lost 1 million people who did not die because there was Ebola, who did not die because there was an epidemic that was spreading, but who died because their neighbors, their relatives, their friends, their colleagues from their churches, from their neighborhoods, from the same clubs that they went to, picked up machetes and enjoyed cutting them into pieces. Children, grown-ups, toddlers, babies, and even unborn babies were killed. And that's 21 years ago. So you can imagine how I must have felt 21 years ago. You can imagine how my people had felt then. The kind of bitterness that we carried around, that most still carry around. People still carry it around. And, you know, the challenges that society faces, the challenges that people are facing in Rwanda, and how they have dealt with them, is something that I think that I could share with others who can put it to use and bring about peace in the world. I personally though a Rwandan, was not born in Rwanda, not because my parents were on a holiday, not because they were on an assignment working for their country somewhere else, not because they were on a mission. I was born outside Rwanda because my parents, because they were Tutsi, were ejected from Rwanda in 1959. Then they came back in 1961. Then they were ejected again. Then they came back in 1962. And they were chased out, this time for good. And only my mother survived to see Rwanda again after 40 years. So most of you will know about the Rwandan genocide from what you've seen in Hotel Rwanda. Others will have read books. And I know, of course, you're peace practitioners, so you know quite a bit about the genocide in Rwanda and about the conflict in that region. But just to give you a background, the problems in Rwanda that led to the genocide did not just start in 1994. They started a long time before then. The conflict goes back many years, very many years, and there's a long history of separation, a long history of changing traditions, a long history of people changing their way of life, but also a long history of balkanization and stratification of society, and of course, underpinned by the colonial period that amplified the separation among the Rwandans. And people lived separately. One group was favored over the other, and when they were past use by date, then the colonial authorities changed who they favored, and therefore the violence started in 1959. Very many Tutsis in 1959 were killed. This time alone, they were targeting men and boys because in my tradition, it's a patriarchal society. You take your father's ethnicity or lineage or tribe, whatever you want to call it. So they thought at that time there is no point of killing women and girls. So they killed only men. Same thing happened in 1961 at the referendum. Same thing happened in 1962. Same thing happened in 1963, 1967, 1973, 1982, and 1993 again, and then the genocide, culminating into the genocide in 1994. So, having said that, I personally was not born in Rwanda. I was born in Burundi because my parents were refugees in Burundi at that particular time. And my mother had to leave when I was a week old because my father, thought to be a political activist, had been arrested and was in jail. And my mother walked with me on her back for 80 kilometers across to Tanzania. I grew up in Tanzania, and my father was released later and joined us in Tanzania. And I grew up full of hatred. I hated people called the Hutu because they had caused me to be a refugee. They had beaten my father. They had eaten. They had looted and destroyed my family wealth, which I didn't know. I was being told. So every time I had a problem, it was they. Every time I had a problem, it was they. If I was coming from school and I met children and we got into a fight and I lost, it was because I was outside my country and because the Hutu were responsible. When I was 10, the place where we were no secondary schools, so I had to be taken away from my parents to more than 1,500 kilometers so that I can be in school. I was in school, but I was still young. I missed my parents, even though I saw them at least once a year. But if anything happened, if for any reason I didn't have anything, that was because there were people called the Hutu who had done that. So I didn't distinguish those who did it. I didn't distinguish them with their children. I did not distinguish them with any other person who looked like them. So I was bitter. I was a very bitter man. Well, in 1994 then, after Kigali fell and was liberated, and the genocide had taken place, and Kigali fell on the 4th of July, and I entered Rwanda on the 8th, and I was looking for members of my extended family because they had never been out of Rwanda. They had always been in Rwanda, and I didn't know them. I hadn't seen them, but my parents told us about them. We hadn't gone. We couldn't visit them because as refugees we could not go into Rwanda. So in 1994, on the 8th of July, when I entered Rwanda, I was looking for 102 members of my extended family. They lived in one village, on one hill. And by the way, I didn't mention that I like your city. When I see a city with hills, I'm thrilled because I come from a country of 1,000 hills and a city of several hills. I haven't counted them yet, but it's a good city. So I was looking for 102 members of my family. And I looked around. I had an idea where they would be living. But the site was a scene from hell. It was not something that you can begin to imagine. There is an image that will never leave my head when I saw a dog devouring a body on the roadside. And I thought I was brave enough and I wanted to go and strike the dog, and it turned around and bared its fangs like this. And I live with that image in my mind. Then I asked around for those who had been, some people had been rounded up because they were caught in the act of killing. Others who had survived were in different camps in different parts, but I went to ask those who are detained. And I asked them, and they were not willing to divulge any information. But one man volunteered some information about my uncle's family, my father's brother. And he said all their children are dead. They are also dead, with the exception of one young girl who's 3. And I asked, where is she? And he said he took her to an orphanage, a Catholic mission that had nuns receiving surviving children. And he gave me directions. He also gave me the names because he knew her very well. And I went and I picked her up. My first reaction was to leave Rwanda because that's not the kind of Rwanda that I thought. You know, when we lived in exile, my parents told us about Rwanda, very beautiful Rwanda. Everything in Rwanda was very good. Even the food in Rwanda didn't taste like food from elsewhere. Well, I discovered later that it was the same, but we were told very good stories about Rwanda. But this is the Rwanda that I came to. This is the Rwanda that I saw. So I took the girl, her name is Rachel, and I returned to Nairobi where I was working at that time. She was 3 years and she wasn't speaking, not because she couldn't speak, not because she was retarded, but because she was too traumatized to talk to adults and even to children. So I lived with her for 3 years, and when she was 6, that's the only time that she was able to talk. And it was nightmare after nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. So in my house, if I didn't wake up twice in the night to go and see her, screaming, I worried because I thought she would be dead. Because it was impossible for her to actually sleep throughout the night without screaming, without having those nightmares and without those pictures playing in her mind. Then I went, when she was 12, she participated in a court process. We have some courts we call gacaca. These are courts that were created on the basis of a traditional system that used to be there so that they could adjudicate all the cases, because there were hundreds of thousands of people who were perpetrators of genocide who were in jail, and it would have taken thousands of years to actually adjudicate those cases. And therefore they created courts, community courts based on the traditional system. And the strength of this court is that it relied on eyewitness accounts, not just on witnesses, but on corroborated evidence from eyewitness accounts. And she had to, as the surviving member of her family, she had to attend. When she went there, it was this man, the man who actually directed me where she was, who was giving a testimony. She was traumatized, as you can imagine, totally shaken. She relived the horrors. And when she came back, she didn't talk that day. She talked the next morning. We talked the next morning. And I asked her whether she wanted to go back. She said yes. And she went. By the way, she was more brave than I was because I couldn't go there. I couldn't sit through that court because I didn't know, to be very honest, I didn't know what I would do. So she went. When she came back that evening, she came back and said, I think I need to forgive this man. Forgiveness had never crossed my mind, and I did not have that word in my vocabulary. It was not there. And I was not prepared to forgive anybody, and I was not thinking about forgiveness, and it did not exist. Sorry, excuse me. So she said she thinks she had to forgive this man. And I said, why? Why forgive this man? And I was angry. And I was trying to dissuade her from what she was thinking of. And she was only 12. And I thought she didn't know what she was saying. But she said to me, if I don't forgive this man, I'm going to think about him forever. I'm going to keep on thinking about him hacking my family to death, leading all those militias who came to hack my family to death. I'm also going to be indebted to him because he's the one who rescued me. So, and she said to me, when he is giving his testimony, he wants to emphasize that bit. And it makes me feel like I owe him my life. And yet, I do not know why he did not kill me. So, there isn't anything that I could do. She was dead set on it. And the next morning in my own devotion, so I was reading from Matthew chapter 6, verse 14, and it says, forgive. I'm a Christian. And that's my faith. And the whole faith that my belief is nothing if there is no forgiveness. Because the whole basis of my faith is that I've been forgiven. And because I've been forgiven, I need to forgive others. And that's when I can ultimately see heaven, because that's what every Christian wants. But here I was, believing I was a Christian, an ordained minister, and yet I could not even bring myself to forgive. Forget about bringing myself to forgive, but even thinking about forgiveness. This was a no-go area for me. I'd built walls around me, all over around me. I did not eat with Hutus. I did not talk to them. I did not greet them. I did not go to their restaurants or their pubs or their supermarkets or their shops, their weddings, anything. So I virtually was an island with the very few people who had survived. And here was a 12-year-old child challenging my thinking. And I felt challenged. And I thought about it for a while. And I was angry, very, very angry. I was angry. I didn't want to forgive. Why should I forgive? Why? I was angry, but I had to. I had to. For one, I had to make a choice whether I continue believing in what I was believing in, or I had to make a choice to be an unbeliever. And the former was appealing, and I chose to forgive. But then after I'd forgiven, I realized actually I wasn't doing them a favor. I wasn't doing anybody a favor. I was actually doing myself a favor, because by forgiving, I was able to actually stand aside, look at these issues, and work on them. With an open heart, with an open mind, and with a feeling of freedom. After I had forgiven, I was set free completely. Completely. My heart was untied. I saw people for who and what they were. I never classified people and put them in I had very many baskets. I had some good Hutus, some not so good Hutus, and others. And they were all classified and they had labels. But after forgiving, nobody had asked me for forgiveness, so I forgave, because it's me who felt aggrieved. So I thought it began with me, not with the others coming to ask for forgiveness. It began with me, because it's me who was looking for that freedom. It's me who was looking for that fulfillment. So that's my beginning of a long journey as a peacemaker. Because one, you can't live in silos and think that nothing will happen. And secondly, you can't just stand on the side and say, I've forgiven and I feel free and I'm free of the hatred and everything, and the others can kill each other. That would be counterproductive, because we live in an intertwined, in an interconnected society that is fully dependent on social networks. Without forgiving, without being activists for peace in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our nation, we can never hope to live at peace, no matter how good we are, no matter how good we think we can be. So it was after the realization that if Rachel, who was 12 at that particular time, can find it in her heart to forgive and stand up for peace, and become part of a movement that said, this already happened. By not taking a step forward, we are allowing it to happen again. It will happen again. And there is nothing that would prevent it. So I started working with churches. I started working with community groups. I started working with people on forgiveness. Even before people began to speak openly about their crimes and asking for forgiveness. And this is the only thing that I could do. I know the state was looking for justice. The state was looking for retribution. And people still look for retribution even today. And in 1997, actually, 3 people were sentenced to death because of genocide. And people went to see when they were being shot at the firing squad. I remember actually saying they've got what they deserve. And I think I wanted more to be shot. But later on, I asked myself, those 3 were leaders, they were shot. But did peace come? Did we start living in harmony just because these were shot? That justice was done, are we living in harmony? Are we living in peace? So reconciliation and peace building must actually go beyond seeking justice. I'm not saying that justice is not important. I'm not saying that restoration of social interconnectedness is not important. No, I'm only saying that it should be intentional about restoration. It should be intentional about relationships. It should be intentional about the future that we intend to live in. And it should be intentional about the world we want to leave behind. And that cannot just happen because we have planned it, because it's orderly, because there are theories about it, because there's a theory of conflict and there's a theory of conflict resolution, because there is this and the other theory. No. I think what I've seen is a very simple thing that exists in every culture: burying the hatchet and burying it forever. And the only way you can do that is standing up for true peace that comes out of people going out to seek and give forgiveness. This is what I believe. I don't prescribe this for everyone, but I've seen it work. It has worked in my country. I've seen people, I've seen a genocide perpetrator and a genocide survivor exchange vows. This I've seen because they had forgiven each other. I've seen children of genocide survivors and children of genocide perpetrators choosing to live a life that is free from prejudice and choosing a life in the future, not in the past. What guarantees us a life in the future is our ability to forgive and put things behind us, not our ability to carry them with us into the future. I could go on and on, but I want to stop there. It's a very big mistake to make, to tell an African that you can speak for as long as you want. So, and an African preacher at that. So, yes, I'd like to stop there, and I'd like to only emphasize that there can never be peace without forgiveness. What comes before forgiveness is just a rule. It's just a moment when things are quiet. You have no guarantee that they will never erupt again. But when people can find it in their hearts to forgive, then even those who would want to perpetuate violence against them find no cause to do it. Thank you very much. I will take questions. I was about to run away, but
That's not the way it works.
so I've been told it doesn't work like that here. So.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for sharing your story and also that powerful message that you've just given us about forgiveness and not living in our silos. I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do in Northern Ireland, but particularly within our project of the Garden of Reflection, is make ourselves look more outward, look outside of here, understand the pain and the hurt that we have experienced in Northern Ireland and Ireland. You know, it's a real thing, and it, you know, people are different and affected in different ways. But you know, to hear your story, which is so recent, that's 21 years ago, that's our lifetimes. You know, when we know young people within our communities that haven't lived the lifetime of the Troubles, and so lucky they are, but you know, that's within our lifetime, at least anyone in this room, we're all over 21. You know, and that is, it's difficult to hear that, because it is, and genocide is something we always thought about relating to the Holocaust in Germany in 1944-45, you know, but actually it's a real thing that has kept happening since. But your message is something that we really can take and learn from, and thank you so much for, you know, saying that, you know, this is one of the best places in Northern Europe for peace building. I will certainly pass that on, because, you know, I think we're not the only people doing good work. We certainly wouldn't claim that, but we do try, and I don't really have a question as such, but it's just more thank you to you for that. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure there are some questions from the floor.
You know, thank you for your talk. It was really very interesting, and I would like to ask you what you think, how important is religion or faith for forgiveness? You know, if you don't have that, is it possible to achieve forgiveness, or how important do you think it is?
Okay, yeah. You're asking the wrong person, but I'll try to respond. My thinking is that there has to be something that compels you to be able to take such a decision. On my part, it was faith. But I believe that there are people out there who can actually sit down and reason out and say, what compels me is my own survival, because if I don't do this, that means I'm going to live a bad life, or somebody is going to shoot me, because I'm going to be shot in the crossfire and things like that. Yeah? But I think if you take a step to become a peace builder, there is something very compelling deep down. Something very compelling. To me, that was faith, because faith is part of life. But if you choose to actually give your life to building peace, I think there is something very, very compelling. And I think what you need to be able to forgive is for you to realize that without forgiveness, then all is lost. Seriously, I mean, that's what I can say. And that should be that compulsion in your heart, because you've committed yourself to peace building, and yet you look around without forgiveness, there isn't much that you're achieving. So why not try forgiveness? Yeah. Have I answered you? Or have I gone around just like all preachers?
Yeah,
Yes, I've gone around it. You can, yeah, we can go on if you have any other question or a link.
No, I think it's just this understanding. You know, if you don't have the guiding principles, if you want to call it like that, from something like the moral structure of faith or religion, a particular religion, I wonder if it's harder to get there.
It's probably harder. It's probably harder because think about it this way. You don't have anybody looking over your shoulder and saying, why aren't you doing this? Because you can get in it and you can get out of it. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible. And every bit in peace building, I think, does matter. If you forgive for a short while, you might come back and forgive another time. So I guess it might not be like when you're compelled by faith, but yes, it is possible. It's not an impossibility. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please.
While victims and survivors might forgive, if the distrust and antagonism in the general population remains, how do you deal with that?
Well, my thinking is that when you have a conflict in society, it's inevitable that everybody first and foremost thinks they are victims. Everybody tends to think they are victims in that. And of course, and everybody thinks the other is a perpetrator or an oppressor or something like that. So that's how it goes. People think about it that way. It begins, I think it has to begin somewhere. It has to begin with an individual before it can get to a community, before it can get to the whole society. Yeah? And my example is one, but I'm not the only one. And when I started working for peace in my country, many other people also came up and supported me. And we have affected communities. We have affected our society as a whole as well. People talk about reconciliation more in Rwanda than anywhere else I know in the world. And that didn't just happen overnight. People resisted it. People fought it. People thought it was an outlandish idea. People thought it could not happen, but it did happen. When we started actually talking to people, when we started counseling people, when we started telling people that forgiveness will make a difference, people took it up. It's the message we preach in churches. It's the message we preach in gatherings. And by the way, forgiving does not necessarily mean that the perpetrators will not face justice. No, they will. They might not. They might not be sentenced to death or to so many years in jail, but that alone is justice. That alone takes them to justice. In the first place, what we have seen that forgiveness brings out, it creates space for people to actually speak out about what they did and to ask for forgiveness. So the person actually gets to terms with what happened to them, and then they are able to actually, they know what really happened, and they forgive, and the other people feel forgiven. Yeah. So it begins with an individual, but it goes to a community, and it goes to the whole society. Because the target of any peacemaker should actually be going out to the society as a whole. So if people feel they are victims, the only way to get them to let go of this baggage is for them to begin to think that if I forgive, then that baggage of a victim just comes off. Yeah. So if everybody is a victim in society, then they will begin to change, and then they look at it the other way around and say, "Oh, we were also perpetrators, and we need to ask for forgiveness." Have I answered you, sir?
Yeah, I think there's a great difference in scale, I think, between what Rwanda suffered and what's going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, you had millions killed. We've had, what, 3,000, I think.
Yeah.
It's all relative as well, and don't forget people. I don't think
I think there's attitudes in the vast majority of population here who weren't physically affected by the Troubles, and those attitudes remain.
Yeah. Well, sir, I was telling this gentleman when he picked me up last night from the airport, and I said, I've seen people lose their favorite pet, and they cry about it. I've seen people lose a cat and they cry. I've seen people lose a dog and they cry. People lose money and they commit suicide. And yet these are things that you can actually bring back. You can buy another dog, you can buy another cat, you can work for more money, but you cannot reproduce the same child who is killed on the street. So one death is a death too many. Yes, 1 million died in Rwanda, but the thousands who died here did not deserve to die. Nobody deserves to die for anything. People can die at 80, at 90. We still cry. We still feel bad. But imagine people being killed. Yeah. So I think people tell me all the time, I'm involved in different forums, in different peace-building forums in Europe especially. And people tell me, I'm involved in the Balkans, for instance, and people tell me that there are parallels between Rwanda but I'm very careful not to differentiate things or not to differentiate violence, because what actually happens is that it tends to mean that violence in one place is more acceptable and expected than in another place. And that, to me, would be like throwing people in the air and letting them fall down, and it's free for all. But it's important to actually look at it that way, that any death is a death too many. Any death. In a neighboring country, in Burundi, they cannot even agree today how many people were killed because they had a civil war that lasted 13 years. And because they cannot agree on that, they cannot even agree to peace-building programs working in Burundi. And the result, the numbers are increasing. The value of life is almost zero. They kill people every day. They leave people by the roadside just because somebody stood up and opposed the government. They kill them. And then, a neighbor, because they have an access to a rifle, they pick up a rifle and they go and shoot the other one because they do not know them. Somebody recently shot somebody because he said his great-grandfather lorded it over his grandfather, because his great-grandfather, because one was a landlord and the other one was a sharecropper. And now, because he had access to a gun, walked out of his house, went and shot him point blank in front of his children. Yeah. So it's first and foremost, I think peace building departs from where every life is valuable and equally valuable. Any questions? Yeah.
We'll take one more if anybody has any.
I have it's more of personal thoughts.
Sorry, Flavio, can you just talk up a wee bit, please?
Sorry?
You just speak up a wee bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
It's more a personal thought than a question, but it might connect with the early question of faith. I hope it's relevant, and I hope I don't offend anybody's feelings, but I personally come from a Christian background. I would say Catholic as well, because the country where I come from is mainly Catholic. I was never really a Catholic into the making, or much observant, but obviously possibly Christian, if you want to say. When I came here, I was first, one thing that really confused me was that nowhere you could come out with colors. There was always this talking about colors. Public places, colleges, you cannot display colors. You cannot display, obviously, colors then called to a belonging of a group or a flag. You cannot display flags. And then I thought, is this having any sense? Okay, it might have sense in the sense that it keep trouble away from, the short-term troubles away and people for arguing about something. But then I began to think, I kind of had a feeling that maybe faith in the same way was used here as not even as faith, but I thought do people have faith? I was looking at people around me and I had a feeling, I had a sensation these people didn't have any faith. And I'm no one to judge that, because it sounds horrible to say, and it's just the only way I can word that out. But I felt that these people were actually using faith as a flag or as a color. Because I thought if these people really had faith, which in a word, faith means you believe in something. You can also believe you can fix things, you can look ahead and forget. But if you don't have faith, you might not be able to forget or forgive. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I thought, is there really faith here? Are really people believing in their own faith, or are they misleading themselves in keeping on talking about faiths and I'm Catholic, I'm Protestant, and this and that, but in the end, they do really have any faith themselves, or is only a flag, is only a color, something to stand for, and obviously create conflict then. And I always had this feeling with me. I don't know, maybe I'm saying something's wrong.
Well, I can't really answer that, but one thing I want to say is faith is not what you say you are. Faith is what you live. And thank you for saying that, because I think, and I've said this to my friends before, and I said, well, working for peace causes someone sometimes to experience little peace, because I've said to my friends from Northern Ireland, I've been here several times, and I say to them, isn't your problem very tribal more than it is really faith? Because, if it's Christian faith, it's very clear, do not kill. And if you haven't killed, you are probably there standing with the killers or sympathizing with them. You see? So I don't want to be judgmental on that side, but it's something for you people as peace workers, as people who work for peace, need to think about and to boldly challenge as well. Because it denies the whole peace process a very important constituency and a very important mechanism for reaching out and prosecuting peace. So it's very, very important for peacemakers to actually differentiate these things and say, look, this is not about faith, this is about politics, or it's about this, or it's about that, or it's about that. Why? Because if it was faith, it would be changing people, because that's what faith does. Yeah.
I think we need Emmanuel to give a lecture up on the hill about faith and peace building and forgiveness. Because it all makes a lot of sense.
I was very struck by what you said. It might embarrass you to say that you speak with authority. Yeah, well, there's another man 2,000 years ago, when people heard him, they said, this guy speaks with authority. Yeah, so I'm not making a comparison. But faith very often, and forgiveness is a kind of a devotional thing. polite people forgive, you know, nice people don't hold grudges. And faith very often is down to labels or politeness, and it's not real faith. And there's a theologian, a German theologian, Paul Tillich, who talks of faith as our ultimate concerns. What's our bottom line? And you faced a bottom line at one point. And it had nothing to do with what denomination you were or with religion. That's true religion. That's true faith. And we all have it. The atheist has faith.
In something.
Yeah, he has not just in something, he has something deeply human that we all share.
Yes.
And it's when we touch that thing in ourselves that we have grasped faith, or we've been grasped by faith. And I was kind of disappointed that there weren't more people here today, but I'm very heartened that it's been recorded. And I think your talk, is not going just to a small group of people here, but I hope that many of our politicians would sit down quietly and stop running around and hear something useful.
I think that's a great place.
Can I just I just asked, because the story about the little girl was just so moving. How is she doing now?
Yeah, that would be nice.
She got married.
Oh.
She's now a mother to a girl who's 3 years, and she graduated as a journalist a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And she's a peace builder as well.
I think that's great. Yeah. Hard start in life.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. I'll just stop there. Maybe something that I need to say before I leave here. I don't think I'll get any other opportunity. That something when I was researching about Northern Ireland recently, and I saw that whatever happened in Northern Ireland, everybody calls them troubles. So everybody wants to give them a good name. I want to challenge you as peacemakers. Don't give it a good name. Call it by its name. I think that's a very good place to start. Thank you very much.
Thank you.